Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they massively underestimate what they can do in 5. That one sentence explains why so many people chase shortcuts, abandon plans after 60 days, and never build anything that lasts. They are operating on the wrong timeline. Billionaires think in decades, but they execute in years, and the most critical window in any serious wealth-building journey is the first 5 years, because that is when the architecture gets built. The foundation, the compounding engine, the systems that eventually run without you. This video is not about working harder. It is not about manifesting a yacht. It is about what actually happens year by year inside the minds and businesses of the people who cross the billion-dollar threshold. And it is about how you can use the same structure, starting right now, regardless of where you are today. Let's go through it year by year. Year 1, the reckoning. The most dangerous thing about starting a wealth-building journey is that most people begin with the wrong diagnosis. They think their problem is that they do not make enough money. And so they chase more income, a raise, a side hustle, a better job title. And a year later, they are earning more and building less. Year 1 is not about income. Year 1 is about clarity. Jeff Bezos spent the early part of his career at a hedge fund on Wall Street. He was making extraordinary money. By every conventional measure, he had already made it. And then, in 1994, he sat down and ran what he called a regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at 80 years old, looking back on his life. And he asked one question: what would I regret not trying? He quit the job. He drove across the country with his wife, and he started building Amazon out of a garage. What Bezos did in year 1 was not launch a company. He got clear. Clear on what he was actually trying to build, clear on the opportunity he was chasing, and clear on the cost of staying comfortable. Most people never do this. They substitute busyness for clarity. They fill their days with activity and call it progress. Year 1 is the year you stop doing that. In practical terms, this means 3 things. First, you audit your current financial life with brutal honesty. Not just income and expenses, but where your time is going, what skills you are developing, and what you are building versus what you are simply consuming. Second, you identify your primary vehicle. A vehicle is the mechanism through which you will build wealth. For some people, it is a business. For others, it is a specific career skill that commands increasing leverage, like software engineering, law, or medicine paired with equity. For others, it is real estate. The vehicle does not matter as much as the commitment. What kills most wealth journeys is vehicle hopping, switching from crypto to dropshipping to real estate to content creation every 6 months, building nothing and compounding nothing. Third, you begin eliminating the financial bleeding, not the occasional coffee. The real bleeding, subscriptions you do not use, insurance you have not reviewed in 3 years, interest you are paying on debt that earns you nothing. Warren Buffett has lived in the same house in Omaha, Nebraska that he bought in 1958 for $31,500. He is worth over $130 billion. He has said publicly that the house is the 3rd best investment he ever made. The point is not that houses are bad. The point is that Buffett has always understood the difference between an asset that works for him and a liability that looks like an asset. Year 1 is when you learn to see that difference. By the end of year 1, you should have clarity, a vehicle, and a cleaner balance sheet. You will not be rich, but you will be aimed correctly. Year 2. The first real asset. There is a concept in behavioral economics called present bias. It describes our tendency to value immediate rewards over future ones, even when the future reward is dramatically larger. Present bias is why people spend money the moment they earn it. It is why most people's net worth 10 years into their career looks almost identical to what it looked like at year 1. The money came in, and the money went out. Year 2 is about building your first real asset. Not a possession, an asset. An asset is something that generates value over time, with or without your continuous labor. For most people in year 2, the first real asset is not a stock portfolio or a rental property. It is a business or a skill-based platform. A business that solves a specific problem for a specific group of people. Something that can eventually operate independently of you working 100 hours a week. This is exactly what Elon Musk did when he started Zip2 with his brother in 1995, right out of university. They were essentially homeless, sleeping on couches and sharing one computer. But they were building. They sold the company 4 years later for over $300 million. The asset was not Musk's salary. It was the equity. Equity is the word that separates people who build wealth from people who trade time for money. When you own equity in something that compounds, you stop being limited by the hours in your day. Year 2 is not about perfection. It is about starting. Most successful companies are embarrassing in year 2. Amazon in 1995 was a website that sold books and processed orders by hand. Instagram at launch had no filters and almost no users. Airbnb's first listings included photos of air mattresses on the floor. What matters in year 2 is not that you have it figured out. What matters is that you are building something real, getting feedback from real people, and learning the difference between what you think the market wants and what the market actually pays for. By the end of year 2, you should have an asset in motion. Revenue may be small. Profits may be thin or non-existent, but the engine should be running. Year 3. The leverage shift. Here is a truth that most ambitious people discover too late. Effort alone does not scale. You can work 16 hours a day, you can be the smartest person in every room, and you will still hit a ceiling because there are only 24 hours in a day and your brain can only hold so many problems at once. Year 3 is the year you stop being the engine of your wealth and start building systems that generate wealth without you. This is what Naval Ravikant calls specific knowledge combined with leverage. Specific knowledge is the skill or insight that you uniquely possess, the thing that is hard to replicate, hard to teach, and deeply connected to how you see the world. Leverage is what you stack on top of that knowledge to multiply its reach, whether through people, technology, capital, or media. In year 3, this usually looks like one of 3 things. The first is people leverage. You hire, delegate, or partner with people who are better than you in specific areas. Every hour you spend on a task that someone else could do is an hour you are not spending on the things only you can do. Elon Musk has spoken about his early hiring decisions at SpaceX, saying that he was looking for people who were obsessed, not just qualified. Because obsession scales in a way that competency alone does not. The second is technology leverage. You automate what can be automated, systems, software, processes that run when you are asleep. Jeff Bezos built the infrastructure of Amazon's fulfillment network, not because he needed it in year 2, but because he could see that the leverage would compound for decades. The third is capital leverage. You reinvest a meaningful percentage of your profits, not into lifestyle, but into the growth of your asset. Compounding only works if you leave it alone. Charlie Munger has described the first rule of compounding as this: never interrupt it unnecessarily. Year 3 requires something psychologically difficult. It requires you to stop doing things you are good at because those things are no longer the highest use of your time. It requires you to trust other people with parts of your business or investment that you built yourself. This is painful. It is also non-negotiable. By the end of year 3, your income should be increasingly disconnected from your individual hours. The system should be producing something when you step away. Year 4. The compounding curve. Albert Einstein may or may not have called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world, but whoever said it first, they were right. Most people understand compounding intellectually. Very few people understand it viscerally in their bones, because compounding feels invisible for a long time. You plant the seed, you water it, and for years, It looks like nothing is happening. And then it does not grow. It explodes. Year 4 is usually when the compounding curve starts to become visible. Sarah Blakely started Spanx with $5,000 of her own savings in 2000, and she sold a majority stake in 2022 for a valuation of $1.2 billion. She did not reach $1 billion in year 1. She built systems, scaled operations, and let the brand compound across more than 2 decades. But the trajectory was set in the early years. The curve was inevitable once the foundation was right. In year 4, there are 3 specific behaviors that separate people who break through from people who plateau. The first is ruthless reinvestment. The psychological pull to upgrade your lifestyle when money starts coming in is enormous, and it is one of the most dangerous forces in wealth building. Every dollar you pull out of a compounding asset to fund a lifestyle upgrade is a dollar that stops working for you. This is not about suffering. It is about sequencing. Buffett lived modestly for decades, not because he could not afford otherwise, but because he understood what each dollar was worth inside a compounding vehicle versus outside of it. The second is network compounding. By year 4, you should be investing seriously in relationships with people who are operating at a higher level than you, not for networking in the superficial sense, for proximity to insight, opportunity, and deal flow that does not appear on any public market. Charlie Munger has said that you cannot get rich with normal people. What he means is not that ordinary people are not valuable. He means that the caliber of the people around you determines the ceiling on your thinking, your ambition, and your access to opportunity. The third is category commitment. By year 4, you should be known for something specific. The wealthiest individuals in the world are not generalists. They are people who went so deep into one thing that they became the reference point for that category. Bezos is e-commerce and cloud infrastructure. Musk is electric vehicles and rockets. Mark Zuckerberg is social connectivity. The specificity is not a limitation. It is the brand. And brands compound in a way that generalism never does. By the end of year 4, your compounding curve should be visible. The numbers should be telling a story that looks fundamentally different from year 1. Year 5. The billion-dollar architecture. By year 5, most serious wealth builders face a pivotal question. Not how do I make more money, but what kind of entity am I actually building? This is the question that separates people who build large businesses from people who build transformational ones. And it is the question that directly determines whether the ceiling of your wealth is in the millions or in the billions. The answer lies in what economists call scalable impact. A business generates wealth proportional to the problem it solves and the scale at which it solves it. A local restaurant solves a local problem. An enterprise software platform solves a global problem. The effort required to build either one is not dramatically different. The ceiling is. In year 5, the shift is about thinking in systems of systems. Jeff Bezos did not just build a bookstore. He built a logistics network, a cloud computing infrastructure, a marketplace, a media company, and a hardware ecosystem. Each of those systems feeds the others. The power is not in any single product. It is in the architecture that connects them. You do not need to build Amazon, but you do need to ask yourself whether the thing you are building can expand its surface area. Can it serve more people, enter adjacent markets, become a platform that others build on top of? Because if the answer is no, if your business requires your constant presence and cannot grow beyond a certain size without you personally doing the work, then you have built a job. And jobs, even very well-paying ones, do not produce billionaires. Year 5 is also the year to think seriously about equity events. An equity event is a moment when the value you have been accumulating gets converted into realized wealth. This might be a fundraising round that formally values your company, a strategic acquisition, a merger, a public offering, or simply the sale of a stake. Most billionaires did not become billionaires by earning more. They became billionaires by owning something that became extremely valuable to others. The wealth was always in the equity. The liquidity event was just the moment everyone else could see it. By the end of year 5, if you have executed each phase, you will likely not have $1 billion in your bank account. The timelines for that vary enormously by industry, by opportunity, and by timing. But you will have something more important. You will have the architecture, the compounding asset, the leverage systems, the network, the category authority, and the equity in something real. Those things are the precondition for every billionaire who ever existed. Here's the honest truth about this plan. The 5-year framework is real. The psychology behind it is real. But there is one variable that no framework can control, and that is the willingness to stay in the game long enough for the compounding to work. Most people quit in year 2. They quit because the asset is not producing the return they imagined. They quit because something shinier appears on the horizon. They quit because the work is harder than they expected and the results are slower than they hoped. The people who stay, who water the seed every day even when nothing visible is happening, are the people who eventually reach the other side of the curve. Jeff Bezos was told that Amazon would fail. He kept building. Sarah Blakely was laughed out of rooms. She kept building. Elon Musk nearly went bankrupt twice before SpaceX and Tesla both succeeded in the same year. The plan is not complicated. 5 years, 5 phases, 1 vehicle, compound, relentlessly, never interrupt the curve unnecessarily. The question is not whether the plan works. The question is whether you will